iCat's breath smells like cat food. Here's your look at the Super 7, The Simpsons Ultimates Ralph Wiggum. Sure, Ralph Wiggum may enjoy simple pleasures like eating paste, picking his nose, or pretending to be a unicorn, but behind that innocent facade beats the heart of a true romantic. This 7-inch scale, highly articulated Ultimates figure of Ralph Wiggum, as seen on The Simpsons, comes with interchangeable heads and hands, a variety of accessories, including a first and only Valentine, and a computer. Ralph Wiggum has some of the most memorable moments and lines in The Simpsons, making it impossible for you not to choose to add this made-to-order Simpsons Ultimates figure of Ralph Wiggum to your collection. Unfortunately, no Wookiees will be bent over the course of this review. Just before we get a closer look at Ralph Wiggum from the new Simpsons Ultimates, let's see what the tape measure is telling us. It's telling us that the figure is going to stand at 4 inches in height, or Ralph Wiggum is 10 centimeters tall. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Ralph Wiggum is the only normal kid character we've gotten from the Simpsons Ultimates line. Let me just back that up a bit. Ralph Wiggum is the only regularly dressed Simpsons citizen member, at least as a kid, that we got ourselves from the Simpsons Ultimates line. Sure, yes, we did get ourselves Bart, but we got Bartman Bart. We also did get ourselves a Maggie, but it was an alien Maggie that got packed along with Kang. Ralph Wiggum even, in fact, beat out Milhouse. So, in fact, despite what the show will tell you, everything wasn't coming up Milhouse. A couple of regular civilian Simpsons members. Of course, we did get ourselves Mr. Burns, and I'm just going to move Bart over here just right next to, who's actually about the same size, give or take, as Ralph. We also did get ourselves Moe, but I mean, very few and far between. We actually got ourselves regular dressed Simpsons characters. One of the big detriments, though, to the line, and maybe one of the main reasons why Super 7 isn't doing Simpsons figures anymore. As for Ralph's accessories, it's funny that he comes with the two things that I quote the most from the character. The first one being his Valentine's card that Lisa Simpson gives him that says, "I choose you." Oh, it's a picture of a train. And down below it says, "Happy Valentine's." The card doesn't open up. It's fairly thick at least, and at least it's made in plastic, so you don't have to worry about this bending or breaking. There's nothing obviously written on the back, but at least with the hands that he has now, you can easily just take the card and fit it in between his hands, just like that. The figure also comes with one other thing I find myself always saying: go banana! In the episode where they're racing this in the bus, I think it's an apple and an orange, or it's an orange and a grapefruit, and then Ralph basically holds up and he says, "Go banana!" and there's basically just a banana in his hand. The one thing I think that was smart that Super 7 did is they just molded the banana already in his hands. Instead of giving you a hand and then giving you a banana and then putting the two together like apple and apple pen, pineapple pen. Was it pineapple pen? I got an apple, you got a pen. Boom, apple pen. Anyways, at least they were smart just to have the banana molded already in his hands. I don't feel like it necessarily, like, we don't need a receipt for this donut. You just, if you're going to have one thing that's going to be holding the other thing, why not just meet it somewhere in the middle and already have the thing permanently attached to it? At least they've done that. They also did that as well for the paste. He comes with a container of paste, and if you don't know, it says paste there on the side. And it also comes as well with the lid. The lid, for all intents and purposes, does fit inside itself. And then, of course, it's already molded to his hand, so you don't even have to worry at all about trying to fit that. Can you imagine if this was something as a separate piece and you were just trying to fit that around? There's no way. You'd struggle. You'd just have tears coming down your face. Instead, they just beat you to it. They instead just molded the hands already having these accessories, and it just makes things a whole lot easier. Just to show you what those accessories look like, the hands themselves are fairly easy to remove. So, for example, if you want to take the banana, just remove his hands like that. Just go ahead and take the banana hand, pop that into his hand like that. Likely going to be, by the way, the accessory I'm going to display the figure with. Or again, if you want to display it with the paste, even though banana and paste, what does that make you? Apple paste? Now we're just being silly. Just going to plug that into his other socket. And you can, in theory, eat the paste while he's holding onto the banana. Obviously, it would make a little bit more sense if he's also holding the jar of paste, but you get the idea. He doesn't come with any other hands than the hands you're seeing right now. So either has that, or again, if you want to just default it back to his regular stock hands, those just, again, plug in place. The other thing that he also has as well is his sign. I'm just going to put the figure down here for a second. That says, "Warning, do not hug." Obviously referencing to an episode. The thing, though, about it, though, is he comes included with the "Warning, do not hug" sign, which is fine. He also comes included with a computer, and the computer is pretty cool because obviously it tells him how to spell out cat, C-A-T. Oh, you know how to spell cat too. Keyboard's down below there. This is actually molded, so it's not just a case that they printed on the keys. I mean, it does look good. The thing about it, though, is that I feel it's overlooking one other accessory. One thing that I think is probably when people think of Ralph Wiggum, they tend to think of this specific thing, his little diorama of pre-packaged Star Wars characters. Of course, by now, Skinner's gone around and he's looking around at everybody else's science projects, and then they go up to his and they say, oh, what's this? A diorama. What? Why, it's Luke and Obi-Wan, my favorite, Chewie. They're all here. Why he would have not included that? I mean, the one other thing he also has as well is a swappable head sculpt that already has the smashed down ice cream cone. Even though I know really all the Simpsons characters up to this point have come basically with swappable heads, sometimes even 2 and 3, I don't know if I would say like Ralph Wiggum ever really needed to have one that had the smashed ice cream. I can't see, and again, I'm only speaking for myself. I know he looks more like a unicorn, but I can't ever really see myself ever displaying the character with this. Now, that's only my own personal opinion. If they wanted to keep the head in there, that's one thing. I don't know if I would say I would have sacrificed the computer, because the computer is almost a pretty cool thing. I almost would have even maybe given away the idea of not having the warning do not hug sign in favor of the Star Wars diorama with, again, all the pre-packaged Star Wars characters. So, like, again, like, this is something that, of course, to include with the figure and have displayed with the figure, there's always then the option. But I think I probably would have dedicated the plastic here for instead the little Star Wars pre-packaged figures project that he was working on. By the way, this does fit over his head. It doesn't fit over his head the way that you would, it fits over his head the way you would think, but it doesn't fit just without having to first remove the head. The thing I don't like about removing Ralph's head is the fact that he doesn't have painted on hairs where they're on top of his head. In fact, if you look at the hairs, they're all separate. So essentially what they would have taken is the molding of this mop, and then they would have just adhered onto the top of Ralph's head. The thing that goes with that, though, is the problem of having these all being individual strands of plastic. I think it also does suffer, too, by black hair. Anything that's strand hair, like Homer Simpson would have had this problem. We can even go back even as early as Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown is always a hard character to do because he only really has a few little, like, just whiskers, these little strands of hair that he would have on the top of his head. By making those black, you always have to worry that the plastic that they're using for those strands are really thick. Ralph suffers the most because he generally has in the series pretty thin strands of hair, but by the way they've molded it here, it looks like he actually has a lot more foliage on the top than he actually really should. But that also causes a problem too when it comes to removing the head, because with each individually these being strands of plastic, there's been a couple of times that if I go to lift the head, I end up snagging the side of his hair, and luckily nothing is broken off. But if you wanted to, you just pop the head off the ball joint. Obviously, you could replace it with the ice cream head too as well if you want to. But basically, you just take yourself the sign, and then you just put your head over top of that. Put a little bit of pressure there on the top of the head, just to snap it back in place. There we go. The sign, unfortunately, though, probably could have been a little bit longer, and had they even also molded it down, because you can see, like, it looks like he's got more like a dinner tray. I think the rope, again, should have been longer. It also should have been bent down, so it would have fit a little bit more flush to his body, because it just basically sticks up the way it is now. I mean, I like that they included the sign, but I just don't think the sign works as effective as they were hoping. Again, we'll just pop the head back off. The sign just fell. We'll come back to that a little bit later. And again, we'll just pop Ralph's head back in place. The hardest thing about this, though, is like Homer also would have had the same issue. I mean, even though we don't really have a regular citizen Homer to compare with, we did have the Deep Space Homer, and also would have had the same problem. It just though happens that because Ralph has so many more hairs on the top, it comes ever more apparent that I just think that hair's way too thick and it's way too dark. One other problem I also have with my figure, too, is that there's a little splotch of paint. Can you see right there? I know I'm just pointing right there. He's got a little bit of, my guess is, paint that's probably come off of his shirt. I tried to scratch it off. Doesn't seem to be coming off at all, so I've got a little bit of a paint problem, and it just unfortunately has to be on this head sculpt rather than this one here. As for the rest of his body, it's painted pretty decently. It's got, of course, his blue top there on the top. Of course, he's got himself the belt there as well, and the lower pants. The figure does come together nicely, but again, I would have to question really why Ralph Wiggum would have been the first choice. I mean, I would have almost even gone, if they didn't want to do Simpsons characters right away, like the main family right away, and not release the Bart because they already done the Bart man, I would have almost really done Milhouse first, and then I would have done Ralph. Because I think that Milhouse just is a more recognized, more fun character. Even though Ralph really has the more quotable lines from the series, I probably would have done first Milhouse, then in a later wave, I would have released Ralph next. For the figure's articulation, though, Ralph's head's going to be on a ball joint, but the same rule applies. You just really want to be careful of these hairs. The head's going to move back and forth. It's going to look not really up, and more so, a little more on the downside. You can also move it back and forth only just a little bit. The arms rotate fine and good. You can also hinge the arms out as well. There's a swivel there on the forearm. You can also bend at the elbow, and the hands do rotate all the way around. For the upper torso, even though it's not a ball joint, so it's only just going to swivel back and forth. The legs do, though, split out on ball joints. You can take the legs and move them only a little bit further forward, just a little bit back. That's about it. He has a little bit of a bend there. Now, there is a knee bend, but again, like with these knees, not that you really could get these guys in walking poses. I guess you could have it with the front of his feet more flat. It could look like, I guess, it looks like he's almost even walking. But yeah, he does have a little bit of a knee bend there. The lower leg, of course, rotates. He also does have an ankle pivot, and you can also move it up and down as well. Figure does have peg holes in the undersides of his feet. Not that that's relevant. I mean, none of these figures up to this point, and obviously we know this line's already dying off. They're not doing any more Simpsons Ultimate figures, which again is a shame. But had they done that, I would have said maybe moving forward they probably could have also included a display stand. Once again, with the only other sized character, at least of a kid, here's also what the figure looks like once again with Bartman. You know, again, looking at this, I know we've kind of said this to death by now, just choosing the characters that they went with for all of these waves. Bartman should have never been the case. I always, keep going back to the review that I did of Bartman. I feel like Bartman could have had just a separate Bartman head that came included with Bart, because already they tease the idea that the cape is removable. We already saw that. You can also as well remove the belt, which I think is, again, a reference to the video game. And you would have just had a regular Bart. And maybe I would have not been as soured as much by the fact we now get a Ralph. Ralph, unfortunately, kind of very similar to like Moe, Mr. Burns, and Krusty. Like, those are really the only characters that look the way they look in everyday, like all the episodes of The Simpsons. Ralph is one of those characters that unfortunately is kind of bittersweet. Yes, I would have been happy to get myself a Ralph, especially for the idea that I quote the character so much in my everyday life. But I feel like he's not a character that we needed right away. And with only being the right away being the now only way we're getting these Simpsons figures from Super 7, it means, though, that future characters, more worthy characters that I feel should have come in the first place, or maybe ahead of the line before we got ourselves Ralph, we're never going to see those characters. We're never going to see a regular Bart. We're never going to see a regular Lisa. We're not even going to see a regular Milhouse. And all I did was put in my name, Thrill House. It's, again, a bit of a bittersweet pill to take, the fact that we only are getting ourselves a Ralph. I like the look of Ralph. I'm not as crazy about the idea that his hair looks as black as it does, but it's a nice looking Ralph. I just don't feel like we needed to get him right away. If you look closely, you can actually pinpoint the exact moment his heart breaks in two. It is, again, a bit heartbreaking that this line is coming to a close. To the credit, though, of Super 7, I have never really said that they've done bad figures. Quite the contrary. Their Simpsons figures have been incredible, but the problem with it, though, is the choice of characters that they've went with. Ralph necessarily isn't a bad choice. I would have chosen, say, a Ralph over a robot Itchy or Scratchy. The problem, though, is where they decided to place the figure. I feel like, again, he probably should have come later into this line, that at least if the line got canceled, we could say at least we've checked off the characters that we would have wanted right away. Milhouse, again, I feel should have been in front of the line, or at least further up the line than what we got with Ralph. Again, we should have probably got ourselves a Bart Simpson, a regular Bart, instead of getting a Bartman. But again, I know we've talked about this to death, the idea that Super 7, just again, I thought, arrogantly thought this line could just last a lot longer. That if true collectors, the ones that were really sticking around this line and would get everything that they've released, could then wait a little bit longer, and then you would get the true Simpsons family members later down in the waves. Well, again, we all know that didn't happen. So we do get ourselves Ralph, but it comes with a bittersweet pill. From the figure standpoint, it looks okay. There's a few little issues with it. Like, one of the things I didn't really mention in this review that you probably see yourselves seeing right now is that between the front half and the back half as we've bought it, it looks clearly like they've taken two halves and they've put them together. One side doesn't look so bad, but the side that's coming around right now, you're going to see that there's a very obvious line divide where the front half of the body and the back half isn't quite completely seamless. Not that that's a big deal breaker. I think the biggest thing I take away from Ralph is that I just feel like his hair is too thick and it's too black. The hardest thing would be is if the hair was separate. You couldn't make it any thinner because there's the risk that the hair would just snap. They'd have to make it thicker, or what they could have done, and I would have just been fine if they did, had they just sculpted the hair as part of his head, and then they would have just painted the strands instead. Now, obviously, it would have not made the figure more of a premium. I know they're kind of going with that when they were doing the ultimate figures of anything, really. They want to really put them out with the idea that they're premium figures, and probably one of the reasons why Ralph has separate hair. But if it came at the price that Ralph looks like he's got a lot more hair than he does in the actual episode, I would have, in fact, I would have even suggested, lose a little bit of that premium look to the characters and just had thinner strands of hair sculpted on the head rather than it being a separate piece. What do you guys think of Ralph? Let me know down below in the comments section. What other characters would you have liked to have seen be released before we got a Ralph? Also as well, is there ever a Ralph quote you guys see yourself saying frequently? Just the other day, in fact, I said choo choo choose me with a word of a lie. But yeah, again, like, what's one of your favorites Ralph quotes? Let me know down below in the comment section. By the way, if you guys are interested to get this one for yourself, I did grab this one at Entertainment Earth. I grabbed that one, and I also got myself Duffman. So you guys probably already know which we're going to be looking at in the upcoming review. Making sure, by the way, you're not missing out on anything that I'm doing regularly. First, if you guys did enjoy this video, want to do me a solid and throw it a like. If you guys did want to stick around for more, and obviously did want to see the review of Duffman, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you're turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.